Adding this one thing to your golf swing will add instant speed, power, and distance to your swing. In today's video, we're gonna show you why making this simple tweak is gonna be so beneficial to your game. Then we're gonna show you what it should look like, and then of course, how to do it. So I think when golfers grab the driver, and really with all clubs we see this, but especially with the driver, we see golfers step into the ball with a setup that's almost putting a governor on the speed they can produce.
The more we teach golf, we start to see patterns, and the more we measure things, we learn more about why things work the way they do in the swing.
Or don't work.
And you know, one of those things has been stance width, and it seems so trivial to most people. It's like, well, I'm just gonna get in there and stand natural. The problem with that is, a lot of times, the correct way to do things feels a little unnatural at first, and you have to kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And one of those things is having your stance width a little bit wider. Because a lot of times when I show people where we want them, and we'll talk about that in a minute, they feel like, oh my gosh, I've never had my feet this wide before.
Shaun's standing on dual force plates.
Yeah, really good ones, by the way.
Really good ones. And we do this all the time in our golf schools, in our lessons, where a player will, you know, once we've introduced ourselves and we all know each other and we're going through the lesson, it's like, okay, I'm gonna need you on this next swing, because we can measure exactly how far the feet are apart. Take your feet 3 more inches apart.
Yeah.
You know, the player may be still warming up with a wedge and he's like,
you sure about that?
what? That's where I put my driver.
Yeah.
And we're saying, what? That's where you put your driver? So everyone's default, rarely I would say, do we see a golfer too wide.
Yeah, it's hardly ever.
You usually see too narrow, and you know, everyone's got, you know, wide shoulders, narrow shoulders, and we like to kind of go off the shoulder width, but it really doesn't have any effect on what the legs do. We want to go off the hips.
Yeah, over the years, everyone's always talked about, you know, shoulder width stance,
Right.
and the more we kind of look at swings and dive into what's really going on, that really doesn't have a huge indication on where your feet should be. You want your feet to be referenced to where your pelvis is and your hips. For the full swing, you always want them wider than your hips.
Yeah, you want to have kind of an A-frame with the lower body where he's got angle to both of his legs coming out, especially as the club gets longer, because we've got to generate forces. We've got to generate horizontal forces. Every golfer does. We've got to generate torque, and we've got to generate vertical. Vertical's kind of baked in, meaning you're standing over your feet hopefully throughout the whole golf swing.
We hope so.
So you're going to have vertical force is going to be everyone's dominant force by a long shot. It's spreading the feet a little wider that allows you to take advantage of the horizontal and the torque, which is what everybody wants.
Yeah, and there's a point of diminishing returns where you really can't
Right.
move, but there's a sweet spot in there for every golfer, and that's something to play around with. And you'll notice right away, all things being equal, there's your stance width where you definitely will start swinging the driver faster.
Absolutely, because you can generate larger forces with the ground.
It's like an optimal width for your body type, and it's just something that you can play around with. And once you find it, you know, it's a good thing to practice paying attention to. You can even put an alignment stick down or your driver like this and say, okay, I know when I have it where I want it, the driver head is here and my other big toe is on the edge of this, where this shaft is painted. Like, have some kind of reference point. But to have your feet wider than your hips allows, what Mike said, to play inside your feet, which I think is such a cool way to think about the swing.
Yeah, we don't ever want to see our body getting outside of our feet, because then, especially in the backswing, now I've got, when my hip goes outside my feet, that takes a lot longer for me to slow down and transfer back over. The club's not going to wait. The club's going to keep going. So now I'm late to the party with the forces I can generate. The same on the downswing. I want to be able to get over this foot, not blow past it. And the narrower this gets, the more we start to see hips moving around, ankles twisting, and an all just across the board loss in speed.
I think what happens to most golfers is that they get on the golf course, and let's say they're hitting it a little bit crooked, everyone tends to shrink what they do.
Absolutely.
Because they're trying to control the golf club.
Flight or
and
fight.
the golf ball. So you shrink your motion, you shrink your stance with, and it just makes things worse. Especially with the driver, you have to let this thing swing. It's the longest club in your bag. But the other pitfall to having this narrow stance, the more we look at swings that are incorrectly kind of feet spread apart here, it makes problems with the pivoting motion. So the golfer that does it, if I just put my arms like this, they start turning and it's more of like a knee pivot. You
Right.
can see how a lot of times, and you might see this in your own swing, if you make a backswing pivot and it looks like your shin is straight up and down, and this quad here, femur, goes in this way, that's a stance width problem.
You'll see that always with this knee kicked in too much. So you're just knee pivoting rather than body pivoting.
And if you do it the right way, what you can start to see is this nice angled line that you're braced into at the top. You see all good players, right? And then on the other side, instead of having kind of something like this, you have the leg again where I can hit into it. So I'm hitting into this kind of bracing leg here, and when that gets in that position, this golf club has the ability to swing, and I could swing it with some authority.
Everybody generates those three forces: horizontal, the heel to toe, which is creates the torque in the horizontal plane, and the vertical, which also creates the torque in the vertical plane. To do that, like to generate those forces, I'm not trying to push hard into the ground. I want a base wide enough where I can just start to sling my body around into that brace. If I'm here and I sling my body around, now I'm sliding. Now I'm getting way outside my feet. If I go right here, I can sling without getting that look you just described, and then throw it back and sling back into here. I'm playing against really firm legs now.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity, like you said a minute ago, you get this frontal plane torque.
Yes.
When this club is coming around the corner here and I straighten this lead leg out, because it's braced, it's going to send these forces, and we've looked at as many as anybody, right, back this way, which allows me to create some torque in that direction, and this club can go slinging through.
One of the most important elements of adding speed to your swing is your ability to brake and stop. You can't just add speed. If you wouldn't want to put a Ferrari engine in a Yugo set of brakes.
No brakes, no brakes.
Because you wouldn't take the car as fast as it would go because you never stop it. Same thing with a golf swing. If I don't have brakes in the backswing and in the downswing, I've got to govern how fast I can go because I'm not going to fall down.
No.
Or stammer around, I'll miss the club face, and there's no point in adding speed if you don't hit the middle of the face.
Well, if you thought about it too, if I want this to go fast, I'm going to accelerate the lower segments, and then once I kind of reach the range of motion here, it's going to brace.
Right.
And that sends the energy up through the chain to finally the end of that whip is going to crack. But if you don't have the stance width for it, you're just having to muscle and plow and use a lot of effort for not a lot of output.
That's right. So that's the horizontal, which we can see pretty clearly on video. Next is generating that heel to toe, that torque in the golf swing. I'm very limited because, again, the vertical is always the dominant in the swing because of where the hips are relative to the feet. But if I straighten out right now, I've got a big wrench on this side and a big wrench on this side versus a little wrench and a little wrench. I can really twist and move my feet to create the bigger moment arm, which helps create more turn in the body.
Again, you'll get more club head speed with the same output, which is what we're all after, right?
Right.
Instead of always trying to think about, okay, I got to go to the gym to get stronger, and I got to swing speed
That's right.
sticks and whatever else.
It's a more efficient, you're getting more speed for your horsepower. That's what we all want.
Yeah, and that goes along with this idea that why don't you try to maximize what you have already, and then if you want to add speed to that, that's great. And this stance width idea, a lot of people, again, will just discount it. Oh, it's just stance width, it doesn't mean that much. Well, it does mean a lot because, A, this is your stance width for the full swing, but it also means a lot in the short game because your feet are going to be closer together, and that allows you to hit those shots. So
Right.
I think this whole concept around getting really dialed in with the foot placement is worth the hassle of learning how to do it correctly.
Yep. So get yourself in front of a mirror at home first. Your phone, whatever. Get your feet where you've got decent angle coming out of your hips. Okay, so the belt down to the feet. I want to see angle there. If it feels wider than normal or if it feels weird, all of those are good signs. It means you're probably closer to where you need to be. Take that, measure it, like drop your club down, get a little Sharpie, measure where each toe falls like Shaun just showed you, then take that outside. And then, hit a few balls like that. It's gonna feel super weird at first, especially if you're used to a narrow stance. Then go maybe another ball wider, a little wider to the point where, okay, now I really can't move that well. Then I can rein it in. But every time we have a long driver come in here and they stand on these plates, they feel confined with how wide these plates are. Put your feet on the edge of each plate.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the senior
That feels confined to them.
Yeah, we've got Fast Eddie's a member of our facility here, and he comes in here and hits for us just so we can watch him hit. And he's pretty much on the edge
It's
of
like,
these
hey,
plates.
make sure you stay on the plates, right?
Yeah,
We're never
exactly.
telling those guys to widen out, because you want to generate a lot of force when you swing, and to do that, you got to have a foundation to be able to do it. Otherwise, you're going to be flopping all over the place, then you'll slow down. You'll hit it worse. So it seems super simple, and again, it's the simple things that people miss in their swings. Widen that stance, take it from inside to outside, film yourself, make sure you're doing it, and really start to move your body. You can almost be a little reckless with shifting into the sides now, knowing that you're not going to slide out past your feet.